So I want you guys to do something real quick. I want you to close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to picture something. I want you to picture yourself 10 years ago. I know. You can do this. 10 years ago. Just picture yourself. What was that like? Who were you like? Might be scary for some. Might not be a good moment. Might be a great moment. Who knows? Just picture who you were like. And then I want you to picture yourself right now, tonight. Who you are tonight, in your chair. Who you are tonight. And just think about that for a second. Who were you 10 years ago, and who are you tonight? You know, we're all here by different circumstances, but we arrived at this room, this moment right now, together. Right now. We all share something in common. You can open your eyes. Why don't you think about that for a second? Because we all share something in common from that 10 years till now, you know, and it brings me to kind of what the Lord's put on my heart for tonight, and just what I've kind of been finding in some scriptures lately, and we'll go over that tonight, is just, it's the idea or the truth of process. We've all gone through a process, 10 years. We've all gone through a process to get to where we are tonight, you know. Process is all about growth. It's all about change and response, how you respond to things, difficulties, obstacles in your life, just things that we've been dealt, forks in the road, all of that, right? And so we have to go through a process to become who God's called us to be and who we want to be. And so, you know, there's a grind. I really believe that God cares about the process. I think he cares about the results, but I think he also cares about the process, the grind, the day in, the day out, the fighting, the choosing, the pursuit, you know. I think he really cares about the process, because a lot of times we don't see immediate results in our life. It takes time, doesn't it? It takes time to get to become that person that we want to be, that who God has called us to be. It takes time to get to that point, and so we all share that in common. There's that process that we're on. We're all at different stages, different levels of that process. And guess what? It doesn't stop. Who we are today is not who we should be tomorrow. It's not who we're going to be the day after. We should not be the same person a year from now that we are right now in this moment. We should be constantly pursuing, constantly fighting and advancing and growing. And that's what process is about. It's about growth. And so tonight I want to share some scriptures. I do have several tonight. Josh is going to be exhausted by the end of this. But I want to start. They're familiar stories. I was reading this recently, and it really just caught my attention. And so let's go to Luke chapter 1, starting verse 11. There we go. An angel of the Lord appeared to him. So just real quick, this is about the story of John the Baptist, his birth, how he came into the world. And so an angel of the Lord appeared to him, being his father, Zacharias, standing to the right of the altar of incense. Zacharias was troubled when he saw the angel, and fear gripped him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your petition has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will give him the name John. You will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He will drink no wine or liquor. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit while yet in his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the sons of Israel back to the Lord their God. It is he who will go as a forerunner before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children and the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Zechariah said to the angel, "How will I know this for certain? For I am an old man, my wife is advanced in years." And the angel answered and said to him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God." Like, are you kidding me? "I've been sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you shall be silent and unable to speak until the day when these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their proper time." The people were waiting for Zacharias and were wondering at his delay in the temple. But when he came out, he was unable to speak to them, and they realized he had seen a vision in the temple, and he kept making signs to them and remained mute. When the days of his priestly service were ended, he went back home. After these days, Elizabeth, his wife, became pregnant. She kept herself in seclusion for 5 months, saying, "This is the way the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked with favor upon me to take away my disgrace among men." Interesting start. Angel shows up. I'm Gabriel. Why aren't you listening to me? This is going to happen. And Zacharias becomes mute. We're going to keep going. Verses 57. Here we go. Now the time had come for Elizabeth to give birth, and she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and her relatives heard that the Lord had displayed his great mercy toward her, and they were rejoicing with her. And it happened that on the 8th day they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to call him Zacharias after his father. But his mother answered and said, "No, indeed, but he shall be called John." They said to her, "There is no one among your relatives who is called by that name." And they made signs to his father as to what he wanted him called. And he asked for a tablet, wrote as follows. Could you imagine just writing on tablets today? His name is John. They were all astonished. And at once his mouth was opened, his tongue loosed, and he began to speak in praise of God. And fear came on all those living around them, and all these matters are being talked about in the hill country of Judea. And all who heard them kept them in mind, saying, "What then will this child turn out to be? For the hand of the Lord was certainly with him." And I want to focus on that verse right there. What then will this child turn out to be? You know, people were wondering, who's this going to be? We've seen this encounter. Zacharias visits an angel, or vice versa, backwards. And, there were many age-old prophecies concerning John the Baptist, a forerunner to come hundreds of years before he came, about him. You know, people were familiar with, there's one that will prepare the way for the Messiah. You know, and let me jump to those last four in Luke 1 there, Josh. Nope, sorry, verse 76. So now the time had come for Elizabeth to give birth. No, that's where we were before. "And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you'll go on before the Lord to prepare his ways, to give to his people the knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, with which the sunrise from on high will visit us, to shine upon those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace." And the child continued to grow and to become strong in spirit, and he lived in the deserts until the day of his public appearance to Israel. All right, that is a mouthful. Glad you stuck with me. Here's the deal. John was prophesied about. He was spoken about. They were declared many years in advance of his arrival. And then he shows up, you know. And in those last verses there was his father actually prophesying over his son, saying, "This is who you're going to be. You're going to do these things." And what I want to focus on, and what the Lord was showing me when I was reading those verses recently, was just that it didn't happen all at once for John. It didn't happen overnight. That's not how it worked, you know. John, it said he had to grow in the Spirit. He had to grow, and it's like he spent years in the desert preparing for the day when the Father sent him to start his ministry, you know, preparing, getting ready, you know. And it's like there's that process that he had to go through in order to become ready to step into the role that God had for him, to step into the man that God called him to be. You know, from the moment that he was spoken over, declared over, he had so much potential over his life from the very beginning, before he was even born, took his first breath. You know, but that didn't just happen at once. He actually had to make choices. He had to choose to put himself into a position to become that individual, to become that man that, guess what? There's no one like John. John had a unique destiny that no one got to experience besides him. You know, there's only one person out of all history that got to prepare the way for Jesus. And what a big role, what big shoes to step into, what big shoes to fill, you know. And it's like he didn't take that lightly. He took it upon his shoulders to say, I'm going to do what I have to become, to be ready for that role that you've given me. You know, and so it leads me on the same thought as I was thinking about it, reading those verses, John becoming John the Baptist, you know. And my first thought sometimes is, well, didn't he have a choice? Didn't John have a say in the matter? Didn't he get to decide if he wanted to actually become that one that was spoken of for hundreds of years? Did he want to become that? Like, could he have just walked away? What would history have looked like if John just was like, nah, I'm good. Throw in the towel. This is too hard. I'm out here in the desert all by myself. eating who knows what, wearing who knows what, nobody, to keep them company. If we see a guy like that in the wilderness today, we're probably going to stay away from him, And it's like, what would it look like? Did John have a choice? And then I take that same thought, because in that same section where John's being talked about being born, Jesus is being talked about being born. And John and Jesus were relatives. And Jesus obviously had a miraculous birth. It's a little bit different because Jesus was God in the flesh, And it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around, at least for me, to really think about God stripping his divinity and just stepping into flesh and being born as a baby and going through life. But even in that, we can look at that and we can say Jesus himself had to go through a process. Jesus himself had to decide that he was going to step into that role of what his Father was declaring about him. He had to set aside his own personal will, his own personal agendas. He had to decide who he was going to be, and he had to go through that process. And, we have so many just heroes and legends around here that we look to. So many people in this room that have fought hard to get to where they are today, that have gone through extreme difficulty. Just, it breaks your heart to hear the stories, right? You just think about it and who they are today, and it's like, I know they didn't become that person overnight. They didn't become that person in a week. You don't become Steve Orsillo in 24 hours. He often says, if you want to, do the things that I'm doing, if you want to have the results that I have, and that's 40 some odd years. Sorry, Steve, if I didn't get the amount of years right, but that's 40-something years of history he has with Jesus, of walking it out, of fighting the fight, of putting himself into a position where he can actually have real faith and authority in his life, where he can overcome. We don't become that overnight. I know we get frustrated. I get frustrated. I want to see results immediately, I want to see things, I want to see breakthrough happen instantly in my life. And I get frustrated when it doesn't. Why does it have to take time? Why do I have to walk out this truth? Why can't it just change my heart all in one moment, I know that happens, but it seems more or less that God is about the process of becoming that, of us fighting through those obstacles, fighting for what we really want, fighting for who we want to be. And so that's where we're at. We have to fight. We have to decide what we want. We have to decide who we want to be. We have to make a conscious choice to put ourselves in a position to actually go after that, right? I was thinking about the fact that struggle is what produces growth. It's the obstacles that present opportunities for us. We hate it. We don't pray for it. Trust me, we don't say, God, give us more struggles. Give us more things to overcome. It's like we look at the fruit in people's lives and we're like, I want that fruit. But do we know what they had to go through to get that? Do we know what they had to overcome to be where they're at? And what we're at? Do we know what we're asking for? Because we're asking for that. We're probably inviting some struggles into our life. We're probably inviting some process into our life, some things that we're going to have to tackle and run after, And it's like we're in an interesting season right now, obviously, with the fires and the destruction that's going on and just people losing everything, and the heartache that's there. And I can't relate to that, losing everything. Moments like these really make you look at your life. They make you examine yourself. They make you hopefully inspire you to reach out and serve people around you, And I can't relate to that type of loss, but I know I've had struggles in my life that I've had to overcome. I've had my own personal fears and failures and hurts and wounds that I've had to overcome. It's in worship I was just reminded of. It wasn't that long ago. It was probably, I guess it was long ago now, 7-8 years ago. I've been here almost 10 years, so it's hard to pinpoint the exact year, but I was sitting in Steve and Vicky's office, and I was just, for some reason, at a really low point in my time here in Oroville. and just depressed and lonely and not sure what I wanted. And I'm in their office. They called me, and I knew it was going to be a come to Jesus meeting. I was glad Vicky was there, to kind of soften the blow a little bit. And you know how Steve is. He starts by asking questions and getting to the heart of the matter, what's really going on. And I remember just getting in my face and just like with his finger, just like, why won't you let anybody love you? Why won't you let anybody love you? And it was like those words, I couldn't even respond. It was just, I just started crying in that moment. It's like, why won't I let anybody love me? It's like you paint a target on everybody's back that tries to love you, and you push them away. I've had to fight hard to come against that. One of the biggest things I've had to overcome is letting people love me, letting people see me, letting people close, not keeping them at a distance, not isolating myself, not keeping myself withdrawn from people. It's possible to live in a community and still be withdrawn from people. Just because you live in a house with 8 people doesn't mean you're actually letting them see your life. Doesn't mean you're actually engaged with their life. It takes a conscious effort of letting them see you, letting them in, letting them speak. And Steve's, why won't you let anybody love you? And man, I don't know, just the walls broke in that moment. I just couldn't hold it anymore. And then Vicky prayed for me, and it was all good now. And then I was healed. 24 hours later, I was all good. That's perfect. No, but that invited an opportunity for me to go through a process of just recognizing it. Like, we have to recognize it first, right? We have to see the issue within ourselves that needs something done about it, We've got to recognize, I don't like that. I don't want to be that way. I want to be somebody different. And then we got to go after it. And that's where that process starts of, okay, now that I've heard the truth of Jesus, now I've got to receive that truth and I've got to walk that truth out. So that I can hopefully say a year from today, hey, guess what? That's changed in my life. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't believe that about myself anymore. We look back at the story of John, it's like he had a choice. He had a choice of who he was going to become. It wasn't just, this is prophesied, you have no choice, you're a robot, you must now become the Baptist and do it all, prepare the way. It's like he had a choice. He had a decision to partner with Jesus, to become, I don't think he realized what he was going to become in history, but he had a choice, right? And he became that person. He became that person. And it's like we look around this room and I can see there's potential in every single life that's in this room. There's purpose. There's prophetic words that have been spoken over your life, over my life. There's things that have been declared over our life, and it's a beautiful thing to think who we can be and who we can become. But we have that same choice to make of who we actually are going to step into being. And it's that day in, that day out grind that God created that we have to go through in order to become that person. If we go to John 1:6, we see that John actually fulfilled that. Nope. John 1. I skipped the order there, Josh. I left my Bible. How much seat? John 1, verses 6. There we go. Hey. There came a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. In 19, this is the testimony of John. When the Jews sent to him priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." They asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" And he said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you, so that we may give an answer to those who sent us? What do you say about yourself?" And he said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as Isaiah the prophet said. And then Matthew 11, real quick. This is Jesus saying about John. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. I'll focus on that first part. I don't want to get into the second part too much, but Jesus just declaring about John as he is great. There's not anyone greater than John the Baptist. That John actually fulfilled his role. He stepped into that role, that potential, that purpose, because he went through that process to get to what it took to become that man. And so John wasn't the only one that had to go through a process. There are so many examples in the Bible. You know, I think about the fact Jesus took 30 years before he actually stepped into his ministry. 30 years of waiting. Why did he wait that long? I don't know. How long did he know that he was the Christ? You know? Did he know from like an infant? Those are things I think about when I read the Bible sometimes. How long did he know? But Jesus himself had to wait 30 years to prepare, you know? I think about the disciples. Jesus spent 3 years teaching them before they were released after the crucifixion, resurrection, before they kicked into their ministry. And they went on to change the world. 3 years of just process, of learning, of receiving, of being involved in the life of Jesus. 3 years. You know, Peter, we see in Acts, it's like he became a bold man before he was timid and afraid. You know, it's like he stood up and he started revival. And then there's also somebody else. I'm going to show you a picture. That's not what I had. There we go. Yeah. There he is. That is me when I first arrived. Handsome man. Mop on my head. They used to call me Corey Matthews from Boy Meets World. That's right. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. See, if you go to that first picture, I like that last one the best, but if you go to that first one, a whole lot of process had to go on right there. A whole lot of change had to happen for me to become that guy in that last picture. Tell you what, Lisa would not have wanted that guy in that first picture. And, you know, it's funny to think about, and I had you guys thinking at the beginning, is who were you 10 years ago? That was me 10 years ago. And this is me today. You know, and I have had to overcome my own stuff. You know, I talk about that guy in that first picture. He wasn't someone that you would want to follow. He wasn't really someone that you would want speaking into your life or holding a mic on a stage and telling you about Jesus. That guy was like wrapped up in a whole lot of self-hate, rejection, isolation, pornography, just addictions, you know, disappointment, you know, just not really living with much purpose. And that was who that guy was in that first picture. And I look at that last picture and it's who I am today. You know, it's like I fight for purity. I'm a husband. I actually can let people love me today. I actually have real friends today. I have best friends today, you know. I have family today, you know. Family that just fights with you by your side day in, day out, you know. And it took a lot, you know. And I know there's more to come. I know that I have my current struggles, my current whatever, fill in the blank, that I don't want to stay in. You know, but I know that that first part is recognizing that there is a journey to go through, that there is a process to go through that we have to overcome if we want to change, if we want to be somebody different. You know, I was meeting with Jordy last week. I was chatting with him, and I was talking to him about some of these thoughts I've been sharing with you tonight, and he had a really good quote I told him I was going to steal. when I was asking about, did John have a choice? Do we have a choice? And he said, if you really know God, if you really know who he is and who he says that you are, do you really have a choice? I was like, oh, that really spoke to me, because we can. We can pursue that person. We can become that person that God says we are. We have to recognize who God says that we are. We have to see that, hear that, believe that. And sometimes it takes hearing it from those around us if we can't hear it for ourselves, if we can't believe it for ourselves. We've got to let other people be willing to be that voice that can speak that into us, so that we can become that. And so, guys, tonight it's like I just feel the Lord's just speaking all about that, is that we have a process to go through. We're somewhere along the line. We have breath in our lungs. We know we haven't reached the finish line yet. We haven't loved enough yet. We haven't loved Jesus enough yet. We haven't become the perfect picture of Jesus yet. So we know that there's still more to go, right? Myself want to keep fighting for that. Keep progressing towards that. Moving towards that. Moving myself in a position to have that and to become that. And so, I know Jesus cares a lot more about how you finish than how you start. Jesus really led me to Revelation recently, and in there a bunch of times he just really talks about, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. He who finishes shall receive hidden stones and crazy things. I don't even know what they are, but he says you get it, so it must be good. And it's like, it's not where we're at today, it's how we finish. But let's get going. If there's things you're struggling with, if there's obstacles in front of you, let's start tackling them. But don't do it alone. Do it with Jesus, and do it with family. Do it with community around you. Become that person. You do have a choice.